standing in front of a country house built in the style of English aristocrats, surrounded by ladies wearing long gowns and bonnets. But I haven't traveled back in time to Regency, England. For one thing, the sun is blazing down, and it's hot. Way too hot for Britain. There's a barbecue restaurant down the road, and a DoubleTree by Hilton 1 block over. I'm on the wrong side of the Atlantic. This is the Jane Austen Summer Program in North Carolina.
Jane writes exactly what she knows, and that is why she is a genius.
I'm Anissa Khalifa. This is The Broadside, where we tell stories from our home at the crossroads of the South. This week, we follow a group of Jane Austen superfans who gather annually to celebrate her life and work, and find out why this literary icon is still so relevant 250 years after her birth.
For a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Yes, he must indeed.
Okay, so that line from Pride and Prejudice may not, in 2025, be a universal truth. But it's a quote that's launched 1,000 adaptations. Just look at all the retellings we've gotten in the last few decades. A lot of them set in the modern world. Everything from Clueless
As if!
to Bridget Jones' Diary.
Perhaps, despite appearances, I like you.
And even a big-budget zombie movie.
You're undead.
Pretty impressive for a woman who completed only 6 novels, never left her native England, and has been dead for more than 2 centuries. And this year, she's getting the royal treatment from Janeites around the world. Yes, they have a name. Jane Austen's legions of fans are celebrating her 250th birthday. And a few months ago, I took notice because, to my surprise, I found out that one of the events was scheduled to take place in North Carolina. First off, a good reporter's disclosure. Pride and Prejudice has been my favorite book since the first time I read it at age 14. I was an English lit major in college, and that 90s BBC miniseries starring Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy.
In vain I have struggled. It will not do. You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you.
I still have the DVD box set, even though I haven't owned a DVD player in years. So I pretty much had to go to the Jane Austen Summer Program. This annual event attracts people from across the U.S. There are tea times. There's even a ball. And so when I visited in June, I had a lot of questions. But the biggest one was, why North Carolina?
Well, we just happen to have 2 Jane Austen scholars at UNC-Chapel Hill, James and me.
Not just any Jane Austen scholars. This is Inga Brody, director of the program. She runs 4 different Jane Austen-related nonprofits.
My colleague James Thompson and I were inspired back in 2012, partly by all the upcoming bicentennials for Austen's publications. And there had recently been an article out about a program affectionately known as the Charles Dickens Universe in California that had been running for 30 years. And we thought that it sounded really exciting what they did. And we went and visited them.
That visit inspired Inga and James, who has since retired, to found the Jane Austen Summer Program, or JASP for short. It's a 4-day symposium about the woman and her work. Co-sponsored by UNC-Chapel Hill and North Carolina Humanities, it combines lectures, discussion groups, and activities that allow attendees to imagine themselves living in Jane Austen's world. Some people even dress up in period clothing.
Well, we've had reticule, the little purses, making workshops, and various types of hats and cravats and various embroidery, sewing workshops, so people could get a sense of the things that are alluded to in the literature of the time.
JASP is designed to bring academia to the broader community in an accessible way. Attendees are a mixture of academics like Inga and regular folks who just love Jane. It also has an educational mission, providing resources to K-12 teachers to help them teach Austen in their classrooms. Because the only non-contemporary literature currently required in the North Carolina curriculum is Shakespeare.
This year, about a quarter at least of the people attending are either present or former teachers from around the country. We have 4 people here on a free teacher scholarship.
And even though it gained more attention this year because of the 250th anniversary, Inga made a conscious effort to keep the program intimate. Registration was limited to 150 people. Like previous events, she chose speakers who wouldn't talk down to the attendees. And everyone went to the same lectures.
I also assign people to the discussion groups, like planning a dinner party. So like have a mix of old and young and different professions. And so there's a lot of care involved in trying to keep the spirit, which is one that's very inclusive.
But there was one major change to the program this year. In the past, JASP has been held in the Chapel Hill area, close to the university that hosts it. But this summer, it took place 150 miles to the east, in New Bern. So why the move?
With the 250th of Jane Austen's birth and the 250th of the Declaration of Independence coming so close together, we decided that this year and next year's would be focusing on transatlantic themes and experience in Austen.
The nearly 300-year-old town of New Bern is quaint and historic. It served as the capital of North Carolina from 1770 to 1792. So yeah, it makes sense on both of these fronts. But New Bern is also home to something special, an impressive building called Tryon Palace. It was the home of the state's first colonial governor, William Tryon. When he arrived in 1764, he brought an architect with him so he could build himself a fashionable English-style country house. The project sparked a bloody rebellion.
And the reason it's called a palace was actually an insult at the time, because the nearby landowners in North Carolina thought, well, he's acting like a king. Why does he need such a fancy place? And indeed, he kept having to need to raise taxes more and more on the landowners. And apparently it was the kind of flat tax, so the impoverished people were having to pay as much as the wealthy around here. So it was very, very disruptive, and people were angry.
Those angry colonists were called regulators, and they took part in an armed uprising against Tryon that came to be known as the Regulator War. Tryon's militia eventually won, but it was one of the earliest military clashes between colonists and the Crown, a prelude to the American Revolution. And it happened right around the time that Jane Austen was born.
It's made of solid mahogany.
Which is why a tour of Tryon Palace was included in the program. This was also part of the immersive experience, walking through a replica of a Georgian-era house that's been frozen in time. Here I was, 250 years later, trying to simulate a small part of Austen's world, at a country estate that was itself built to represent the ideals of British aristocracy in North Carolina. It was actually kind of perfect. But this was only one of the many ways these Janeites steeped themselves in the past. After the break, I go to a ball, y'all. Between doom scrolling and the social media fire hose, it's easy to feel lost or overwhelmed these days. Masterclass offers something refreshing and completely different, with more than 200 classes taught by the world's best writers, artists, and thought leaders. I recently checked out a cooking lesson by Sola Alweli on breakfast foods, because I'm a brunch girly. And there's so much more. Get to the bottom of our messy socio-political moment with scholars like Noam Chomsky. Add crucial context to the news cycle with historian Doris Kearns Goodwin. Or accelerate your career with entrepreneurs like Mark Cuban. And right now, our listeners get an additional 15% off any annual membership at masterclass.com/broadside. That's 15% off at masterclass.com/broadside. masterclass.com/broadside.
At Radiolab, we love nothing more than nerding out about science, neuroscience, chemistry.
But we do also like to get into other kinds of stories. Stories about policing or
politics,
country music,
hockey,
sex, of bugs.
Regardless of whether we're looking at science or not science, we bring a rigorous curiosity to get you the answers.
And hopefully make you see the world anew.
Radiolab, adventures on the edge of what we think we know.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
We have never finished reading Hamlet, Marianne.
Each edition of the Jane Austen Summer Program has a theme. This year, organizers appropriately went back to the very beginning. Sense and Sensibility, Austen's first published novel. It's a story of Marianne and Eleanor Dashwood, two impoverished sisters seeking a future and finding true love along the way.
The sun doth move. Doubt truth to be a liar, but never doubt I love. Oh dear.
One evening, there was a performance of Hamlet, as read by Sense and Sensibility characters.
But I love thee, oh, most best. Believe it.
It's a fine letter, but I do not know whether
It's a perfect illustration of how delightfully nerdy this whole 4-day experience is. For these folks, books are more than just a hobby. And fittingly, a fixture of the gathering is a mobile bookstore.
Our bookstore, we have everything from, dress patterns and coloring books to academic titles that are out of print that you can't get anywhere.
Amy Patterson runs Jane Austen Books with her mom, and they've been Janeites for a long time.
So I've been going to Jane Austen Society meetings since I was a child.
Amy's talking here about the Jane Austen Society of North America, which has about 5,000 members. They have huge annual meetings featuring high-profile guests like actors from the big Hollywood adaptations, kind of like an English lit Comic-Con. Amy said that while she loves those gatherings, what makes the much smaller event at JASP different is how interactive it is. Everyone I talked to said half the fun is participating in small group discussions, breakout sessions between lectures where folks dissect topics ranging from carriage design to British inheritance law of the 1800s.
When you see other Jane Austen events, sometimes they're specifically targeted to people who want to dress up. Sometimes they're specifically targeted to people who want to talk about academic topics. I think this event threads that needle really well. I think that's why we all appreciate Austen, is she tackles very serious subjects with a twinkle in her eye.
And the epitome of that approach was the event that happened on the final night of the program, a Regency ball. This ball was a huge production. People rented costumes or brought their own hand-sewn, period-appropriate evening wear. A piano trio played live music. English country dances were led by dancing master Mr. Charles Steplively, real name Jeremy Gershman, who offered lessons ahead of the ball for first-timers. I was even given a dance card to fill out. We were in the Tryon Palace History Center's large central hall, so it wasn't exactly a smoky ballroom lit by candles dripping wax on our heads. But Amy said it still makes the world of Jane Austen come to life. And for her, that's why it's so important.
I think there were some people in the past who would sort of sneer at all the fans they want to dress up. But when you're standing in that room, even in the modern era with electric lights and air conditioning, you start to get a sense of, man, if I was a 17-year-old girl in London without my parents, imagine that guy 5 down is the guy your dad wants you to marry. But you're dancing with the guy you want to marry. And you have to dread this whole time the dance is going to come around. And that part where you switch partners, you're going to have to dance with that icky guy. And he gets closer and closer to you every time.
That, said Amy, changes the way you read the books. And it's true. The ball was beautiful. I dressed up, even though I didn't dance. I felt like I was watching a story I've been reading since childhood come alive in front of me. But it also reminded me that my love for that story is complicated. Just like Austen's heroines, most of the folks who come to JASP are white women. And Jane Austen herself was a white, upper-class English woman who wrote almost exclusively about her own circle. These people were deeply invested in an empire that colonized and exploited my ancestors in South Asia and many other folks across the world. And yet, she is beloved in South Asia. Multiple best-selling Austen adaptations have been written by South Asian women in recent years, and I've devoured them. Pretty much every Bollywood romance film is built upon the scaffolding left for us by Jane Austen, the great-grandmother of romantic comedy.
What's happening now?
Didn't you go to the American Idol? I hope you brought your earplugs.
This is great. This is where the girls tease the boys and the boys tease the girls.
So how do we reconcile that love with all the rest of it?
It is hard for me sometimes because I'm just like, this world is not my world, and this world could never be my world.
Samiha Bala is a junior at UNC-Chapel Hill and was an intern at this summer's program. It was her first time at JASP, but she jumped at the chance when she heard about the internship.
And I submitted an application within the hour because I just love Jane Austen. She's probably the reason I am studying English.
Samiha has found the JASP community incredibly welcoming and inclusive. But as a fellow South Asian, she can relate to my conflicted experience of loving Austen.
Some of the stuff I have kind of a hard time with about Jane Austen is are we pretending like that didn't exist just so we can enjoy the pastel,
Right, I guess one of my questions is, are they also talking about, where did all of the fabric for the lovely clothing that they were wearing at that time come from? Where did all the wealth for these, wealthy aristocrats who are the main characters in her books come from? It comes from colonial extraction.
There's going to be a talk about how the slave trade impacted Jane Austen's novels, so I think we are going to get into it, especially being in North Carolina.
But Samiha says that despite the efforts of organizers to engage with the historical context and its implications, attendees were a little more reluctant.
I could feel myself, this past year, becoming a little bit jaded about some Jane Austen things where I'm just it's just escapist fantasy wherever, where people get to pretend politics don't exist, basically. It's a really weird dissonance that I'm not sure how to kind of come to terms with. Everybody here is so kind and so sweet, but it's also sometimes feels like maybe a tacit little, we're going to focus on this part of it and not on this part of it.
Still, Samiha continues to be an enthusiastic Janeite, and she says JASP has given her a new appreciation for the author's keen eye for human nature and her timeless way of describing women's lives. Maybe the real truth universally acknowledged is that we all love Jane Austen. And for all the folks I talk to, students and educators, academics, and regular Jane Austen superfans, it's this genius for understanding people that makes them come back to her books over and over again.
What does Jane Austen mean to you?
Jane Austen just has a beautiful way of creating characters.
Jane writes exactly what she knows, and that is why she is a genius.
By making us feel like our personal struggles and joys are universally held.
She has such a keen insight on human nature. You read her books and you think, I know that person.
Inga Brody, director and co-founder of the program, agrees with all of that. But even more importantly, she says that Jane Austen's stories gave us a version of love that was ahead of its time and still resonates today.
An idea of finding an equal as a partner, being able to maintain independence and find equality and mutual respect, but also love and marriage and permanence. When people talk about Jane Austen ruined my life or Jane Austen wrecked my life, it's often because when they fail to find it or life doesn't live up to these ideals, people feel disappointed.
I can relate to that. As for the program itself, Inga is proud of the community she's helped create. But next year, she's stepping down to let someone else take charge. Jas will move to Pennsylvania to celebrate America's 250th birthday. In the meantime, Inga has plenty of work to keep her busy. And she has Jane Austen. What's your favorite book?
Ooh, that's always hard. My long answer is that Northanger Abbey is the funniest, that Pride and Prejudice is the most perfect, that Emma is her biggest artistic achievement, that Mansfield Park is the most philosophically profound, and that Persuasion is the most beautiful.
That feels like cheating, but I'll allow it since you're a Jane Austen scholar.
Well, okay, if I had to pick one, it would be Persuasion.
This episode of The Broadside was produced by me, Anissa Khalifa, and edited by Jared Walker. The rest of our team includes producer Charlie Shelton Ormond and executive producer Wilson Sayre. Special thanks this week to Inga Brody and the rest of the folks at the Jane Austen Summer Program for welcoming me into their world for a weekend. The Broadside is a production of WUNC North Carolina Public Radio and is part of the NPR network. If you have feedback or a story idea, you can email us at broadside@wunc.org. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a rating, a review, or share it with a friend. Thanks for listening, y'all. We'll be back next week.
Just when you thought summer couldn't get any hotter, Pluto TV is turning up the heat with thousands of free movies. Presenting Summer of Cinema. Stream your favorite blockbuster films like Gladiator.
I will have my vengeance.
Good Burger.
This is what I call fast food.
Beverly Hills Cop. The Girl with a Dragon Tattoo. And Julie and Julia.
Bon appetit.
All for free on your favorite devices. Pluto TV. Stream now. Pay never.